Hi, I'm Jamie Brett and welcome to Celebration's YouTube channel. This video is one in a series that is exploring about what life in space can teach us about coping with prolonged isolation. I reached out to Mohammad Iranmanesh to help get some expert insights into what life in space can teach us about coping with isolation. Mohammed is an established space systems engineer with a background in technical leadership of complex projects for the European Space Agency and is a co-founder of LIDE.space. He has also undergone isolation experiments with the Mars Desert Research Station, where he worked in isolation with a small crew, one of whom was Camille Gontier. Camille has both a master's degree in space engineering and neuroscience and currently works as a development engineer at the Altitude and Orbit Control Department of Airbus Defence and Space. In this video, we'll be looking at how isolation impacts mental health.
Natural characteristic of astronauts. They are indeed trained to cope with stressful situations, but they are selected based on their ability to have a very strong cold blood, mental stability, and mental resilience. So we all have very different ways to cope with stress, to react in stressful situations. But I would say that astronauts are particularly fit to face these situations because they are trained as teams. Like when a space agency is sending people into space, they are not sending crew members, they are sending a crew of people who are used to working efficiently together. And so being able to work with people you are comfortable with, that you can trust, and which we can live together and face stressful situations is really adding something to the mental resilience of astronauts. This book, Team Peak, is spending a lot of time discussing this very topic, not discussing isolation by itself, but what it means to be isolated with other people. And so actually astronauts are really trained on that and selected on their ability to work efficiently with other people. And what I learned from that is that actually it just requires a little bit of common sense to be able to work efficiently with other people. It's probably a bit more complicated than that, where you have to be sure you are comfortable with other people, but just golden common rule is have some common sense. Don't be an asshole. That's like 90% of the work to be at ease with other people.
It's important to have your intimacy or your private space as well, and you create your own bubble. So obviously you're going to be isolated with people, and there are a lot of benefits in the fact that you're not just alone by yourself, and you still can have some social interactions and some activities that you're going to perform in teams. But it's still important, I think, during the day to have sometimes for yourself. So even in the MDRS, as I said, it's like a 50 square meter diameter cylinder, and so it's very, very, very small space. But even in this case, we had different workspaces and different areas which were specific to different tasks. So we had a kitchen, we had somewhere to sit and work, we had a lab, and then also even in that very confined area in space, we still had small 1 by 2 meter beds, we didn't have bunk beds. Like we each had our intimate and private space, which was still useful. Like if sometimes in the afternoon someone didn't feel like watching a movie with the others or playing games, he didn't have to pretend. He could just go in his room and read a book. And I think that also was super helpful. So even today, if you are at home with other people, with roommates, or like your family or your partner, it's important to be aware that you're going to be spending much more time than what you were doing usually normal time, because you're not going out for work and your sport activities or anything. So you should probably try to keep to recreate that safe space, that your personal space, which could be done in a number of ways, but you still should try to do it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Having separate spaces and separate tasks is fundamental for astronauts. It was really helpful for us during the simulation of Mars mission, and I think it's going to be very helpful for couples who are locked down in the same place and might end up just murdering each other at the end of the quarantine. Just try to. It's normal to have your personal space, and you don't have you don't need to have any problem with that. So I would say that there are three ways for astronauts to manage their stress levels, three ways which are also employed by, not by astronauts, but by people who are used to work in isolation and in remote environments, like people, military working in submarines, or scientists working in very remote location. So I would say that the first way to manage stress levels while being isolated is to keep a routine, to keep being organized. During your normal, and I quote, daily life, you always have a very precise routine, a very precise schedule for your day. You have to wake up, you have to do the course, you have to commute, then you have a list of tasks on your desk, and then you go back home and you repeat it. And a way to prevent stress while being quarantined, while being isolated, is to keep stuck on a routine, to force yourself not to be left by yourself, isolated, but to keep being organized. It has two main effects. The first effect is to prevent the fear of the unknown. You feel like you are not left by yourself without anything to do, but you can go back to previous situation you were perfectly at ease with. And also, the second effect is that it makes you feel like you still have the situation under control. You are not completely lost in a remote environment, but you can you have something stable schedule, stable program to keep up with. A second way which is used by astronauts to manage their stress levels is to communicate about their feelings. Astronauts, and I cannot stress this enough, astronauts are not Superman. They are not Superman who are completely immune to anxiety, to stress, to fear. They feel those emotions, but they know how to cope with, and then they know they have to communicate about that. They are really encouraged to discuss about their mental state, either with their family or with mission command. And this is also something we have to do while being isolated. We have to communicate with our loved ones, or find some help if we cannot. And a last element to manage stress level while being in isolation is to keep moving. So you know that on board the International Space Station, it's mandatory to work out. They can lift weights, they can run on board the International Space Station. And it's not only for medical reasons, it's not only to prevent the loss of muscle mass and the loss of bone density while you are in space, but it's also a way to cope with isolation and to reduce the level of stress. And this is also we can apply while being locked down. I know it's kind of difficult to run a marathon in your flats, but you can still do push-ups, you can still do some jumping jack flash in your living room, which is very important to keep up with the stress. So those little recipes that astronauts use to manage stress can also be perfectly applicable to our current situation of lockdown.
Also, yeah, obviously, so for example, like what you said about, sharing feelings is super important. In my first mission, so we had basically in our plan, we had a mindfulness meditation session planned in the evening. At the end of everything, once we had our session meeting and briefing and everything, we would do a meditation in group and then also share, if something went wrong, just to how it made us feel. And it was quite useful. Keeping up with physical activities, as you said, and then keeping time also in your schedule for just off time, like nothing, you don't have to do anything specific, anything productive. You can just have some me time and leisure activities. So obviously you can't go and play football outside, but we took time with Camille to watch some movies, or we played board games, or and just wind down and not be always thinking about the tasks, but just also some leisure time. And we also were like discussing a lot. So I think it was quite social in the end, our isolation, because we were, joking a lot and having a lot of fun just between us, which was quite helpful as well to deal with our stress level. That's for sure. Something else that we did in my other mission, that we were working with a French artist, and the idea was to have some creative generation idea or time during the day, because you're going to have a routine That's very useful because that's what you need if you want to be productive in isolation and also help you with your day. But at the same time, this routine can be annoying and boring and maybe have negative effect as well. So the idea was to see if we had some cues for creative activity based on a specific theme, how it would impact us during the day if at the same time that we're doing our repetitive scientific task, we're also thinking about, actually, so today I'm supposed to produce something on the theme of archipelagos or oceans or clouds, and what does it make me think of? And if while you're doing your experiment you see a rock that looks like a cloud, you would take a picture and then do some photo montage later. And kind of like combining the two was also helpful to not be just focused on the stressful scientific task and deadlines, but just give some room to your mind to do something else. I think astronauts do a lot of those things. They spend a lot of time taking pictures from from the ISS. They take pictures of the planet Earth and then spend time retouching them and sharing them on social media. We have Chris Hadfield, which is a Canadian astronaut who was playing music on the space station. So I think they all try to look things to do outside of their productive tasks, just to de-stress. The scarcity mindset is definitely a state of mind that you cannot afford to have as an astronaut. You're obviously aware of that it's going to be limited comfort, limited resources, but you're also aware that it's limited in time. So I think someone who has a scarcity mindset, they assume that it's going to be like this forever, and that the situation is going to be permanent. So that's why they always they have a stressful view of everything. They feel like there's just one pie, and if someone gets a share of that pie, then there's not enough for everybody else. You can't really afford to think that way when you're an astronaut. I think for us, you're just going to be more generous. So we had we had our food. We had the food that was assigned to us for the duration of the mission that we had to make rations. But then also, we had some sweets and chocolate, and I think you just try to be you're obviously going to be just more generous with everyone than because that's how it's going to work. Like someone needs more of something, so you're going to be sharing it, keeping that into your account. And then also, I think astronauts are always looking into solutions rather than stressing about the problems, because the problems are going to arrive. So in our situation, we had an issue with the water filter. So with the base station, basically there was a water reservoir outside, and the water is pumped up to the top of the habitat, and then distributed everywhere for the showers and drinking water and everything. And there's a plastic filter basically in the water pump, preventing dust and other debris to ingress into the pump and damage it. And so we had this was damaged, and we didn't have any spare parts left in the hub. So we sent a message to the waited for the time. It was in the afternoon. Send an email as part of the engineering report to the ground station, and then they said, "Oh yeah, we don't have any spare. We will send you some, but it's going to take some time." So at that point, it was either being like, "Okay, so now we're not going to have enough water. We should stop taking shower. We should gonna stop, make sure that we don't drink too much because we don't know how much water we have." But the other way to look at it was we looked at what we had at our disposal, and we had at our disposition, and we had a 3D printer. And actually we did a redesign of that water filter, and we managed to print enough of them to be able to not only repair the water filter and for the pump for our crew, but actually keep a stock of them for the later crews as well. And that way we could just quickly, in a few hours, we managed to fix the pump with something that was never tested before. We didn't plan it. We didn't know that we were going to do it. We didn't even, none of us was really even that much, had a lot of experience with 3D printers, but we just happened to be there. Someone knew how to use a CAD 3D design file. Someone knew how to use a 3D printer. Someone, and then together we just find a solution to the problem. I think that's, when you have limited resources, actually probably, if anything, if you have the right mindset, it can help you to be more and more creative than anything else.
During my mission, which was Mohammed's second mission, is Improvisation Theatre. So we were a team of 6 students from the same university, and we were all very good friends. And one of our other crew members happened to be the president of the Improvisation Theatre Club of our university. And so he introduced us to improvisation theatre. And from some nights after doing the course and doing our slots at in the habitat, he trained us to some improvisation theatre techniques, which were extremely useful in the way that it really releases stress, and also I think it really contributed to our team building, to maintain a good environment between us. So I didn't keep up to do improvisation theatre after the mission, but I do realize that it's indeed a very good way to promote creativity, to promote a good environment within a group. And I recently saw a very interesting TED talk from Uri Alon, which is Professor Uri Alon, which is very famous physicist, and does a lot of presentation about soft skills in science. And in this very insightful presentation, he introduced the audience on the benefits of improvisation theaters on his careers as a PhD advisors.
Yeah, for me, it was the first time I did some meditation, but I haven't been doing it regularly neither. Just the creativity was something that was fun. So, I mean, I still I remember like a few months after that, like just doodling or drawing as during the day, or doing something else that is completely different from my usual field. That has been quite always been attractive to me. Like not just do if you're a space system engineer, not just read about space systems, but you actually want to take a break from your main job and do other stuff. So that definitely. But
thank you so much to Mohammed and Camille for their insights and time, and to the Mars Desert Research Crew 164 for the images and videos. This video is one in a series that is exploring about what life in space can teach us about coping with prolonged isolation. In this series, we'll be looking at what isolation experiments are and what we can learn from the research. How does isolation impact mental health? How the environment impacts people who are isolating and their mindsets. What is the impact of social distancing and loneliness on people who are isolated? Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video.